Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. On tonight's show, we'll be taking a look at some fantastic bikes. A 77 RM250 that was made into a Fox replica. We'll also be looking at a Mako 501 that recently sold on eBay. We've got our product segment. We've got some how to do it yourself segments. It's going to be a great show. But for right now, let's get down to the starting line. Vinco. I'm so proud to announce that Vinco is now a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A. If you haven't been to Vinco.com, I strongly suggest you visit it as soon as this show is over. They make some fabulous products for the vintage bikes. And while the name Vinco may sound familiar to you, Kurt Lieberton has been in the motocross parts business for a very, very long time. He's been the head of a lot of companies that made some fabulous products that you would be very familiar with. He's a vintage motocross enthusiast, and he's now got the Vinco company, he's got the banner flying, and he's coming on board with us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. We're going to be talking more about Vinco products in the future, and I hope you get over there to see them a little bit later. Let's move on. Terry Good, he is really taking it to the people with the International Motocross Museum. On July 20th, 2020, on the North Shore of Chicago, Terry is having a fundraiser with a host of people you can't even imagine. From Hacken Anderson, Les Archer, Roger DeCoster, Harry Everts, Marty Smith, Bob Hanna. There is a list of people there, some that have not been in America since they raced here in the late 60s and early 70s. Even Joel Robert is going to be on hand. I understand Jeff Stanton is, of course, helping Terry Good head this thing up. You're going to want to be there for the dinner. It is on July 11th. Terry has mentioned to everyone on Facebook that the price of tickets will come out after January 1st. We'll know about the cost, the arrangements. There's going to be live entertainment. You'll know about hotels and everything that's going to happen. Terry Good, we're wishing you all the best. You're making dreams come true by opening up the International Motocross Museum. TMC Company, my friend Tom Contino. The guy's renting bikes in Southern California. Renting vintage bikes. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread, in my opinion. He'll bring you a Mako, a Husky, a Honda, a Yamaha, you name it. He's got a stable full of bikes. TMC Company is one of our sponsors. I'd like you to go visit their website when you get a moment a little bit later on. Tom Contino, thanks again for all you're doing for Vintage Motocross Q&A. Why not try this? I've got a tip for you tonight. Something that, well, it seems simple, and it is, but I think you guys need a tip about it. Sandpaper. I know a lot of you are doing your own painting, whether it's frames or different parts. Sandpaper is very, very important. And you want to buy a quality paper. This right here is a quality paper. It's P-rated. What does P-rated mean? Sandpapers have different grades. Like wood has different grades, like tools have different grades, like steel, like anything else. P-rated paper is what you want to use. You don't want to cheap out and go to a Home Depot or any of these other stores and get something that isn't going to give you a quality finish. If we could go on here a little bit, see this? Fandeli. Have you ever heard of Fandeli? Sounds like a delicatessen in Brooklyn to me, but it doesn't sound like a place I want to buy sandpaper from, I'll tell you that. But they probably have it at Home Depot and Lowe's and other places. You don't want to buy something that says multi-purpose. You want to buy something that absolutely suits your product, and you want to buy a good quality sandpaper. Another thing I'd like to mention here is you shouldn't skip grades when you're using sandpaper. In other words, if you have a rough finish on your paint, you're looking to really cut it down right away, and you start with 180. From 180, go to 220. From 220, go to 320, so on and so forth. Never skip a grade when it comes to using sandpaper. Because what you're actually doing every time you use it, see, you're cutting the scratches. You're not just making the surface smoother, you're cutting the scratches. And if you start off with, say, a 180, and then you go down to a 320 or a 360 or whatever you might be using, you're just knocking the high spots off of the scratches. You're not taking the scratch all the way down. Use a quality sandpaper, buy it from your local auto body store, a supplier. You could also go and buy it online. It's a great way to do it too, because it can be very expensive. It can get to be expensive depending on how much you're doing. A roll about this big at this point is costing me about $40 a roll. And I use a lot of 180, 240, and 320. And if you're going to be sanding things in a professional manner, you're going to want to use that too. So shop around a little bit, buy a quality sandpaper, you get a quality job. What do we got next, Gordon? We got this here. This is another tip I wanted to give you. And Jordan, I wanted to thank you for mentioning this because I didn't really make a slide for it. It was just something I thought about today. Sometimes when you want to paint a shock, you don't need to take the shock apart. The shock's in good condition, but the body may be scratched up and you want to put a coat of paint on it. What I recommend is this. You take a piece of hose like this. You slice it long way, and then you cover that shaft on your shock just like this. And then instead of putting tape all the way down the shock shaft and having glue and everything else all over it, you just put a little piece right down here, masking tape, you cover it up, and you're ready to go. Of course, you're going to want to cover up your rubber bumper too, but as opposed to covering the whole shaft with tape and wrapping it around and getting all glue and everything all over it, you can keep it nice and clean, use a piece of hose, slice it long way with an X-Acto knife, put it on there like that. Another little tip I wanted to share with you guys tonight. In the Moto Showcase, we got a beautiful bike here tonight, a 1977 Suzuki RM250 that was sent in by Mike Bosnick. It's a beautiful bike. It was made to be a Motocross Fox replica. It's even got the numbers on it. And this bike was originally sold to Mike, I believe, from Dave Boydston from AMS. Dave assembles a beautiful bike, no question about it. It looks very, very authentic, just like the bike Mark Barnett rode in the 1977 season. It's got all the right parts on it, too. From the Simon's forks to the Thor swing arm to the Fox shocks, the gold anodizing looks absolutely fantastic on it. The cylinder was cleaned like that. It was a bead blasted look, I believe, back in 1977. And all the little parts and little details on the bike look absolutely fabulous. From the aluminum motor mounts to the way the pipe is finished off, I think Mike has really, really hit a home run on this bike. And he bought a real quality piece from Dave Boydston when it began. The spokes have all been done. The hubs appear to be painted and look correct. All the little aluminum bits are polished, but not overdone. I must say, Mike Bosnick, this bike really is nice, and I really want to thank you for sending it in. I encourage anyone to send their bike in to me. It could be any time during the week. Send me some pictures. We'd be happy to put it on the Moto Showcase for you. We have an email now, vmxqa2020@gmail.com. You could also message me on my personal account, Joe Abadi, or through Vintage Motocross Q&A. Mike Bosnick, thank you once again for sending in that beautiful Suzuki RM250. Here's the problem section of the program where people send me in questions throughout the week. I do a little research, try and help them out as best I can with some answers, showing some pictures, and discussing some of the ins and outs, some of the finer points of how to get their problem solved. What's our first one, Jordan? Dave Houghton. After having my 74 CR125 frame and swing arm powder coated, I had difficulty getting the arm to fit between the frame. Making it worse was that the swing arm bushings were already pressed in. Have you ever experienced this? Yeah, Dave, I have. And I'm going to spend a minute here talking about this. What happens is when you send an arm to be powder coated doesn't necessarily mask off the end. You've removed your bushings, but he's going to powder coat the whole frame. He might block it in here with a plug, but the powder coating is going to build up on the outside. From this end, you're going to have your bushing. Now, maybe the bushing that you buy from your supplier, the flange happens to be a little bit thicker than stock. So the next thing you know, your powder coating is built up out here, maybe just 2 or 3 thousandths, and your bushing is now an aftermarket item. That's built up maybe another couple of thousandths. When you put it all together, you've got your frame, and the powder coating has built up on that as well. Next thing you know, what you thought maybe was 1 or 2 thousandths between both sides and the frame, and don't forget, you've got your caps that go over this. Next thing you know, you've got more material on there than you really need, and you're going to have a problem getting your swing arm to fit inside the frame. Here's what I would caution you to do. Tell your powder coater or do it yourself. When you get it back from your powder coater, either sand off or file off nice and easy on the end of your swing arm, or tell him to mask it off before you do it. Measure the bushings that you're going to be replacing when you take the original ones out. Once you press those things in, as Dave had mentioned, once you press them in and the powder coating is still on, they may be sticking out too far. So you want to measure everything and make sure it's accurate before you put it together. So measure your bushings, sand off the end if you're going to be powder coating. Also, when you go to put that in your frame, the material is going to be built up on the frame too, your powder coating. The only thing you can do at that point is carefully take an angle grinder like this with a roll-lock disc on it. They come in different grits. You want to get in there and just go around where the swing arm bolt goes through the frame. You just want to get in there with this, spins around, clean it up nice in there to where the swing arm is going to fit back in there. Don't take away too much material because then you're going to just have raw steel. You might have a rust problem in the future. So, all things considered, I'd be careful with that powder coating. It's a wonderful finish. It's nice. A lot of guys use it on race bikes, but you want to be careful as it starts to build up between the end of the swing arm, inside the frame, and also when you put the caps on the end of your swing arm. Sometimes you paint them, guys plate them. You got to make sure everything is within tolerance. You don't want it to be all sloppy, but you don't want it to be where you're having a problem putting it together. Dave Houghton, great question. Thanks for sending it in. Rob from Eagle, Idaho. I have a few Husqvarnas stuck with stuck pistons, mostly due to the storage without pipes. What's the best way to remove a stuck cylinder? One of the best products I've ever used, Rob, is Marvel Mystery Oil. It's been around forever. They used to recommend you actually put this in your gasoline in the old days to make your car's engine last a lot longer. Marvel Mystery Oil is a great product. You could put it in there in your top end, take your head off, and dump some down there and let it penetrate between the piston and the cylinder. Kroil is another good one. A lot of guys swear by this stuff. Kroil is also a really, really good product. The oil that creeps, it does really get down in there between the rings, the pistons, and will start to penetrate it, and hopefully you can loosen things up. Now, I'm going to give you a word of caution here. Let's say that your piston is just below the exhaust port. You got a little space there. When you put your Kroil or your Marvel Mystery Oil in there, it's going to leak out. You want to use something like this, like a wing nut plug. A lot of plumbers use these, readily available in Home Depot, Lowe's, any kind of plumbing supply store. What happens is, when you turn this wing nut down, this rubber section actually expands. So you want to buy one slightly smaller than your exhaust port. You put that in there, you tighten up that wing nut, it's going to swell inside there. You'll be able to get your Kroil or your Marvel Mystery Oil, whatever it might be. It'll stay in there and begin to penetrate between the piston and the cylinder. I caution you about this. The nut on your ignition side, and this happens to be a Husky, the nut on your ignition side of your engine, you're going to want to rock that piston back and forth. You want to figure out a way to start to move it. Avoid using this nut, okay? It's on the crank. I don't advise you try and break it loose from there. What you can do, if the bike still has a chain on it and the wheel is on the back, you can put it all, put your Kroil in there, wait a couple of days. You can rock it back and forth with your back wheel if the chain is still on there. Try and break it loose that way. You don't want to use too much force. You don't want to break a gear. You don't want to break anything that has to do with the clutch or any other assembly in the bike, because your primary reason for doing this is, of course, loosening up the piston that's stuck in the cylinder. One other thing I can mention. This is a tool for a Bultaco clutch. Got your big clutch hub in front of you. You put this on here, tighten this guy up, put it on your clutch hub. You can rock it back and forth with that too. I've also heard of people using a block of wood. I'm not a big fan of this. You've got the head off, you got your Kroil in there, things are starting to loosen up. You put a block of wood in there, tap on it with a hammer, hopefully it's on its way down, and you could loosen up the piston that way as well. So my advice, Kroil, Marvel Mystery Oil, be careful when you're rocking it back and forth. Eventually, you'll get that cylinder off. Rob, thanks for the question. Joe, I love what you're doing. Very nice work. In the 70s and 80s in Canada, we waited patiently for dirt bike and motocross action to find out the results of races. From that era, who would you consider great rivals or guys you wouldn't mess with on the track? That's from Paul Mazurek. Let me tell you something, Paul. You were in Canada waiting for dirt bike and motocross action. So were most of us throughout the country in different parts. Whether you were in Texas or New York, unless you got Cycle News, there weren't a whole lot of ways for you to get information about what was happening on those tracks. And yeah, it was a little frustrating at the time, but I'll tell you, we live in some world today where in just a matter of seconds, you could type in some things and get all some information. But in answer to your questions about arch rivals on the track, the first one I think of, Jammin' Jimmy Weinert and the D, Tony DeStefano. The rival is epic. Epic. This is like Ali Frazier in motocross, okay? The Jammer, Tony D, their battles were incredible, and to this day, this is one of the most famous pictures ever when it comes to historic or vintage motocross. On the track, they were just absolutely at each other's throats for the entire series in the 250 class. That is just one rival I think about. The next one I think about is, of course, Kent Howerton and Bob Hanna, arch rivals, and especially when it came down to the end of the season. The Massacre at Saddleback, one of the most famous races ever. The rivalship, or the rivalry rather, between them is just epic. As far as other guys and rivals, look, I can't think of too many, really. Those two strike me as the most. I mean, yeah, there was the Hanna-Marty Smith thing on the 125, and I'm not saying that wasn't epic. It was. But it seemed that the Tony DeStefano, Jim Weinert thing, to me, that beat them all. To this day, or should I say now in this day, I've been with Jim Weinert and Tony DeStefano. I've been in their company, and it's really great to see them talk. It really is. It's hard to believe they were at each other's throats like that all those years ago in a motocross race. Next question comes from Sal Scarpa. Sal Scarpa doesn't miss a beat. Sal Scarpa III. Is there a source for factory paint codes for different year, makes, and motorcycles? Yep, there is, Sal. You can go online and see, here's the thing. I don't want to recommend anyone because I've never gone online and purchased paint because somebody said that it matched. You can do that. I hate to be Captain Obvious here, but you can go and Google paint matches for your vintage bike and you're going to come up with somebody. What I do and what a lot of people do is you take your part to a paint supplier, to an auto body shop, and you have them scan it. They do a profit. You take a thing, looks just like when you're checking out at Walmart or anything else. They run it over the part, and you're going to get the exact finish, or they're going to tell you exactly what the mixture is for your paint, so it matches. I especially find this important where you're buying plastic, let's say, from VMX or somebody else, and you want your paint on your tank to match the plastic on your bike. Asking somebody over the internet if it matches could be tricky. You know, they're matching their yellow paint to whose plastic. So what I would recommend is doing a little research on that and make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Sal Scarpa, as always, thank you for your question. Steve Ellis with Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, all using Mikuni carburetors. Why did Honda use Kians? Interesting question, Steve Ellis. It's because that Kian actually owned, or Honda actually owned Kian. So they didn't subcontract their carburetors from Mikuni, which I happen to be a big Mikuni fan. I've even had Hondas in the past, and I've always had Mikunis on them. I run them on CZs, but a lot of guys that I do know that race Hondas, and there are a heck of a lot of them out there, they all stand by their Kians. They're all jetted beautifully. They all have no problem with them. So that's why Honda decided to use Kian, because they were a subsidiary of Honda, and that's how it went down back in Japan. This is also from Steve Ellis. I love how you gave away the Harley book a few weeks ago, and last week a subscription to Motocross Action. It is better to give than to receive, Steve Ellis. I like doing that on this show, and we're going to try and keep doing that. Now, in the tune and in the tone of Christmas and giving and that kind of spirit, I'm going to give away a $25 gift certificate to our new sponsor, Vintco. The first one to call me with the correct answer wins. Now, take your time here for a second. Listen to what I'm about to say. You're going to call in and you're going to tell Susie, who's on the other line, you're going to tell her who invented this throttle. Who was the name of the guy who invented it? What is the name of the throttle? And you're going to call in at 206-818-4255. 5196. This is for a live audience only. I have no idea why Jordan put that there, because to my knowledge, I don't have a dead audience. Anyway, it's not important right now. 206-818-5196. Who's the guy who invented that style throttle? What is that throttle called? Susie's inside. She's ready to take the call. When she gets it, she'll come out, give me the phone, we'll tell you who won. Let's go on to the next question. Dave Brockman, I have a 1974 Kawasaki 250 that I still ride. I want to sell the pipe, the stock pipe that he has, to fund a 1974 YZ250A project. What do you think the pipe is worth? Should I sell it? Well, I'm going to tell you this. First of all, this isn't Dave's bike. It just happens to be an example which shows a beautiful pipe on a beautiful bike. You have this bike right now, David, the KX250, and I understand that you want to fund a YZ250A, which can be a very expensive bike. Here comes Susie. It looks like we got a winner. Do we?
No? You there? Hold on.
Put him on speaker.
Okay.
Hi, this is Joe. Who am I speaking with?
This is Frank Ford.
Frank Ford. Can you tell me the name of the style of that throttle and the gentleman who created it?
It is called the Gunnar Gasser, Gunnar Lindstrom.
You are absolutely correct. Thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to give the phone back to Susie. She's going to get your address. We're going to give you a $25 gift certificate to Vintco. I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, and thanks for calling in.
Thank you, Joe.
All righty. Thanks, Susie. Merry Christmas to you. Thanks, Susie.
Okay. I need your...
Now, let's get back to the Brockman question. He's got the KX250. He's got the pipe. He still has the bike. But he's thinking about selling the pipe. Well, here's my advice. I saw a 125 pipe on eBay this week sell for $300. The pipe wasn't in bad shape overall. Yes, it has some dents. But the important thing is it was never repaired before this. I've had pipes that people try and repair them. It's worse than the original damage. So this pipe for a 125, which I think is a pretty rare piece, just as rare probably as a 250, maybe even more rare. But a downpipe for it, much like downpipes on anything these days after 40, 45 years, getting very, very difficult to come by. So what do I think your pipe is worth? 300 bucks? 400 bucks? I haven't seen the condition of the pipe. I don't really know. But if you want my real advice, David, being you still own the bike, don't sell the pipe. Go around your shop, go out there wherever you are, scrape up some other parts and go sell them and get yourself $300 or $400 out of those parts. Don't sell the pipe. You still own the bike. You might fall in love with it. If you're going to race it, maybe you want to restore it someday. An original pipe on a bike like that, it's a wonderful thing to have in the time of either restoration or if you're going to sell it. Because while the next person who maybe wants to buy your bike says to you, well, it doesn't have the right pipe on it, and I want to restore it, and he's going to bang you around for $400, $500, $600 on the price because it doesn't have the original pipe. Well, when you have the original pipe, you can deal from strength. Don't sell the pipe, David. I appreciate the question. It's a great question, and I advise that with anybody who's got a decent down pipe out there for the bikes that had them, whether they be KXs or TMs or certain other bikes of that era. Don't sell those down pipes so quickly. They're not getting any easier to find. Next question. What's it worth segment? This was a lot of fun this week. I went on eBay. I saw a particular bike. It's a very, very rare bike. I wasn't even sure they had really ever even made it. I've heard of a 501 Mako before. We all have. I never knew that they made a 74.5 GP 501. This bike was sold for $14,500 on 9/27. It was sold by Gary Quartz. When I saw it on eBay, I recognized in the description where the bike had come from. It said that it was restored by Eric Cook. I know Gary Quartz does a lot of business with Eric Cook, and he actually was the person who sold the bike. Gary Quartz was. I spent about a half hour on the phone with him, and he explained to me that there were only 47 74.5 GPs in with the 501 configuration. The bike was restored by Eric Cook. It looks absolutely amazing to me. The rims, the spokes, all the fit and finish on everything looks correct. The shocks, I like the way everything's been done here. All the finishes look nice and even. With the hardware being done, the correct screws, stuff I would expect out of Eric Cook or Gary Quartz. Of course, the telltale sign, K50, stamped into the cases, I'm sorry, K501, stamped into the cases that tells you it is, in fact, a 501 Mako. The plate on the front, same thing. Also, we look over here, it says 501 stamped into the frame. Gary Quartz, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak to me on the phone, telling me about this bike, the history of it, how few of them there were. The original asking price for this bike was a buy it now price of $17,000 on eBay. The final sale price, $14,500, and there you have it. Thank you, Gary, for taking the time to speak to me and telling me all about this bike. And because Gary was so nice, this week in the Vintage Motocross Q&A Product Spotlight, I would like you all to spend a little time and go over to the website of SoCal Mako. Gary Quartz, great guy, always there to pick up the phone. He's down in Ventura. He's got a great supply of parts. He's got an email. He's got a website, and he picks up the phone when you call. If you need something for your vintage Mako, I advise you give Gary a call. He'd be happy to help you out. By the way, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about TMC Company, Tom Contino. I said one day, Grant Langston wanted a bike. He just went down to Tom Contino's and he rented a Mako 490, and he was out there. That's not really the case. My mistake. This bike that Grant Langston was riding actually came from Gary Quartz. It is a 490. Grant absolutely loved the bike. It was on display at Langston Motorsports down in Southern California. So I wanted to make that correction, tell you who was riding the bike and who was actually the builder of the bike. There's Gary Quartz clearing a triple, maybe even a quadruple, we don't know, on a Mako 490. Go over to SoCal Mako, check out Gary, see what he's got online, see what he's got in his supply. He's got a real nice supply of stuff down there. He's always been very helpful to me whenever I needed Mako stuff. Gary, thank you so much for the help. In the announcements tonight, the Tony DeStefano interview. I'm still working on this. Three-time national champion Tony DeStefano. I'll be back east starting Christmas Eve. I'll be back there next week. I'm trying to catch up with the D. He's out in Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half from where I stay when I'm in New Jersey. It's Christmas. His family's coming in. We've got some things going on, but we're still trying to get the details worked out. Now, while I won't have a show, well, I will have a show the day after Christmas next week. December 26th. Could Tony be on that show? Possible. I'm not thinking he is. It's probably going to be sometime after the 28th. What I want to do, tell you to sit tight. I'll bring you the information. When I get a hold of Tony or Susie speaks to Anna, we're going to make a time. We're going to try and bring Tony D to you live sometime between Christmas and New Year. Vinco. I mentioned him earlier. I'll mention him again. Kurt Lieberton. Vinco. Vinco.com. They've got an email. They've got a website. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook. I want to urge everybody to go over, take a look at the products that this company has for sale. You're going to be amazed at what they're doing, and it's quality stuff. Vinco. Thanks for being a sponsor. I'm really, really happy about that, Kurt. Thank you. TMC Company, you know what they do. They rent some of the coolest bikes you'll ever ride in vintage motocross. Tom Contino and the gang down there in Southern California. You want a bike for the day? You want to go out to Glen Helen or Pala or one of those other cool places and ride a vintage bike? Give TMC Company a call. They'll hook you up with a Husky, a Honda. They've got all kinds of stuff. And Tom tells me that they're coming out with some products too. They've got some great hardware that they're machining and reproducing. So he's going to be doing some stuff as well. We'll have products on the show after the first of the year, so you'll know more about what TMC Company is doing. And of course, don't forget Vinco. My friend Keith Geisner, we had a book of his on the show that we gave away a couple of weeks ago. He tells me that sales have been doing really, really good. He's got it in hardcover now. He's got softcover available. You can go to archwaypublishing.com. You can get the hardcover for $38.95 or the softcover for $27.95. Or you can just get a hold of Keith Geisner right on Facebook. Give him a call or drop him an email. I think he's got it at a little bit of a discounted price. Plus, you'll get an autograph from him in the book, which is going to make it extra special. I want to thank Keith again for sending us that book a few weeks ago, and I wish him well with the sale of his book. It's a great stocking stuffer. I don't know if you order right now, if he could get it to you in time for Christmas, but maybe you can. Tomorrow's Thursday. Maybe he puts it in a priority envelope. Get it by next Tuesday or Wednesday. There's a good possibility. There's only one way to find out. Get a hold of Keith. Ask him if he can do it for you. Sponsorship opportunities. We've got TMC Company. We've got Vinco. There's still some opportunities available for people who want to step up and be a sponsor of this show. We've got 4 levels. Some of them are exceptionally, reasonably priced, and you get a big bang for your buck. Drop me a line. Let me know if you want me to send you a proposal package. Next year, you're going to see a little bit different look here in the studio where we have some banners flying for Vinco, for TMC Company. There's no reason why we couldn't put you up there as well. We're going to be making commercials for those companies, showing in some breaks. We're going to be doing a lot of things. So, if you want to become a sponsor of the show, get a hold of me. And while I'm thinking about it, it's a perfect opportunity to say this. The Brad Lackey interview from last month, over 50,000 people have been reached from the Brad Lackey interview. The Rodney Smith interview, over 30,000 people have been reached from that interview. From the little shows that I do every week with nobody special on, just me sitting in here bringing you some information, all my videos hit over 20,000 people. The shares are absolutely unbelievable with how many people really like the show. So, we've got a sponsorship package for you. It's very affordable, and who knows, you can reach a lot of people. And I'm going to have some big interviews coming up in 2020. I guarantee it. We're working on Tony DeStefano right now. I'm going to call a lot of my other friends too. Once we get the ball rolling here, we'll get them to step up to the plate. They'll come down. There's going to be a lot of eyes on your product. So get a hold of me. I'd be interested in taking a look at it and sending you that proposal. Jordan, I want to thank Mike Burchard. Now, Mike sent me a private message last week after the show was on. He said to me he likes the show so much, he wanted to make a donation to the show, which he did. He didn't say donation at first. He said he wanted to send me something in the mail, which I thought was going to be a Christmas card. A Christmas card arrived. In there, Mike had made a little donation. From that donation, I was able to give the gift certificate tonight to Vinco. So I want to thank Mike Burchard for making his donation. It was a very generous offer, but it's because of Mike Burchard that we really were able to do the $25 gift certificate tonight to Vinco. Mike Burchard, Merry Christmas, blessings to you and your family, and a healthy and happy New Year. Thanks for that donation. I want to thank all the viewers who come in every week. It's wonderful to be here with you. I'm grateful for the questions you sent in, for everybody that watches. I won't be with you next week until after Christmas. So for right now, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a healthy and happy New Year. I want to thank Jordan, Susie, and everybody that makes this show possible. Thanks for watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. We'll see you soon.